Welcome back to Gray Squadron Gaming, guys. I'm back with Will Squared again.
Woo! It's like we never left.
It's like you never left. We're taller today.
That's true. We got better chairs.
We got
this
better
time.
chairs, so that feels good. Before I get into all the craziness you guys announced last night, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves again in case someone's watching this one and didn't watch the other one.
Sure thing. So I'm Will Shick. I'm the Vice President of Creative Direction and Strategy, or the co-head of Studio now.
I'm Will Pagani, the Development Director, Supreme Cat Herder.
I like it.
Supreme Cat Herder. I like that. You guys had a little roadmap last night. Showed off some things for all the games. Trying to organize my question set this morning. It's like, where do I want to start? Do I want to go right for the heavy thing? I think I do. You guys didn't show off just a few things last night for Legion. You showed off a lot. And you mentioned that the biggest one was coming out in about 3 months, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the new Mandalorian Battle Force?
Army. Well,
Army?
yeah, like
Yeah,
so they're really they're a really interesting kind of force, I guess, because it is several battle forces, because as we discussed, players can either play one of the established Star Wars Mandalorian clans, like, Death Watch, Clan Kryze, Clan Ren, Covert Mandalorians, and then I think Clan Saxon is the last one, if I remember correctly. So you can do one of those, or there are also rules that allow you to create your very own unique Mandalorian clan and assign it certain clan abilities and traits and those types of things based on the rules. So it functions similar to a battle force in that there are battle force rules for each of the different clans, including kind of like the create your own. But it's also like this generic army, right?
You almost took that like customizable person to the next level. You made it for a whole army.
Yeah. And so, like, really, I think, we're going to start having to figure out all this different terminology for, like, what is a faction versus what is an army versus what is a battle force. And I think those are going to be very different things in terms of, like, what players should expect. I think the important bits that players probably are most concerned about is, like, I think it's important to note that the Mandalorians are not a new faction. So they're not going to see that regular, like, every 2 months you're going to get something new for them. They will see expansion when there are good opportunities to do so. Obviously, one of the things that's going to be coming out early next year that's going to build on them is the Fang Fighter, which was also a big tease that I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, but we can't say too much on that stuff outside of what people saw. So again, just trying to set expectations, like what things mean, what they are. It is more than a battle force, absolutely. And we have certainly a lot of cool ideas and plans for it, but it is also not a brand new faction, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to be important for sustainability and how we move forward, because if we keep adding new factions, then that's more and more stuff that we have to, like, guaranteedly expand. It's really going to limit our ability to be able to do stuff. And, well, Mandalorians are pretty big and prevalent within Star Wars. There's also that question of, like, well, how much more new things will we see for them? Like, what will come out? Will we have? Keen eyes probably realized that, like, in what we showed, we didn't really cover the Mandalorian survivors that we see in season 3 of Mandalore, or the Mandalorians. So, like, that's definitely a possibility. There's a lot of good ground to cover.
Yeah.
But at some point, we don't necessarily know what's in the minds of all the creatives at Star Wars and LFL going forward. So we want to make sure that we're kind of presenting things in a way that sets player expectations as best we can, and then allows us to ensure that we're developing and pushing the game forward as best we can as well.
Yeah, no, it looks fantastic. I showed a lot of named Mandos. I saw, like, the Armor, Paz Vizsla. I saw the new sculpt for Sabine out there. Bo-Katan, of course. Looked like Axe, I think, was out there, too, if I remember seeing the images right.
Mandalorian as well.
New Mandalorian with the Darksaber.
Yep.
He looks fantastic with Grogu sitting on his little hut, or his little mound. That looks great. Which one was your guys' favorite clan to play with in playtesting and such?
Ooh. I think the Covert's the one that I like the most, just because. Oh, is that what you're going to pick?
My answer.
Sorry. I changed my answer immediately.
I'm just a Paz Vizsla fan.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's why, right? The Mandalorian, Disney Plus series was such a cool show, and it had great moments. And, like, those are the Mandalorians that I kind of, like, ascribe to, just because in my mind they're fresh and everything.
Yeah.
And I was never a big, like, I liked Rebels, but I don't have the same attachment to Sabine and Clan Ren as some folks do, and I think, so for me, it's like, okay, well, if I really was going to pick one that I gravitated towards, it was the one that was fresh in my mind and I had a lot of ideas from. And from a hobbyist perspective, the Covert to me is the most fun because, like, you get a mishmash, right? Like,
Yeah, they're kind of all bits together.
But at the end of the day, I think the most exciting thing is the fact that, like, you don't have to use any of them, and you can just build your own. And that was a blast. Like,
Absolutely. That's probably actually my answer is the build your own. But if I have to pick one of the existing ones, it's gonna be covered.
No, they all look great. Clan Ren's probably where I have the soft spot for in
Yeah.
Bo-Katan, so I'm curious to see more about them. But no, they look amazing. You mentioned the Fang Fighter. We saw it in the little trailer that you guys showed off. It has an interesting, it's like a clear X kind of base.
it does.
Is that for balance? Is that for gameplay? But both. Will we find out more? I'm sure later. But what can you say about that kind of new?
So I'm not going to give away too much.
Fair.
I can say that base, developing that base and the innovations that you'll find out about that base are the entire reason we were able to bring flyers to Legion in a way that I'm very excited to share, and I'm sure Pagani is too, because one of our things when we started talking about it originally was we didn't want to bring in like airplanes that didn't feel like airplanes, and how we were going to do that effectively. And being players of these games for so long, we knew that there were a lot of complications when you want something that flies but has to have a base stick around it.
Because of physics.
Yeah,
right?
because of
Like,
physics.
You can't just float.
You know,
It'd be cool.
And well, we've all dreamed of rail systems to like slide your little airplanes along so they don't have to touch the ground, or using magnets for magic. That wasn't the way it was. So that base is very specifically designed. It has some very unique attributes to it that I think are really going to blow people's minds in how we've never seen, aircraft function on a miniature tabletop before, and it really opened up the possibilities to make these feel correct and right and fun to play with and all of this good stuff. So we'll cover more of that as it goes on, but yes, it's a very weird base. It's weirder once you actually know how it works and what it does, but all of that was specifically engineered and developed and innovated from the ground up in order to make these new starfighters feel exactly like what we see in the media and the films.
No, it looks great. Just even this the one shot of the Fang in the middle of the Mandos look amazing. A couple questions I saw pop up in our Discord and community was one, are like the existing, I'm gonna use quotes here, flyers, like your air speeders, your lat. Are they going to be adopted to those, or are they going to be a separate thing and still just be heavies? Or can you say anything about that yet?
They're not going to change. We're not going to retroactively go back and change those things. A lot of those items, with the exception, I mean, even the T-47, right? Like, it hovers. It has like a VTOL mode. And for us, like the way in which we approach the new flyers, like if you're a flyer, you don't VTOL, you don't hover. And of course, we see like them take off and land, and they could clearly like stay static. But for us, like the big differentiation was like, yes, we could do that, but that was not the goal. That's not the, what would you say, the vision, I guess, of them. And so we've specifically very much designed these to be different, and we're perfectly happy with letting the lat and the previous ones that were kind of like pseudo flyers be pseudo flyers. And so
Nice. Right. No, that's fantastic. And then with the Mandalorian Battle Force, you also showed off another build your own, the customizable Mandalorian Hunter, I think it was. You mentioned on stage that the operative one can be more like a kind of generic bounty hunter for all the factions. Do you want to talk anything about that?
He does.
Perfect.
I mean, it could be a generic operative for all the factions, and I guess one of its doctrines is bounty. There are, of course, other doctrines as well, so you can kind of customize and build whatever you want out of the character. But we had to do something like that, right?
Yeah.
You can't just make a Mandalorian that says make it whatever you want and not have it be a bounty hunter. It's one of the options.
I agree.
But one of the really exciting things about Mandalorians in general, for me, was all of the like cool gadgets and gizmos and gear that they get. And we've done a lot to apply that not just to the build your own, but also into the units and stuff. So you're going to have a lot of customization options in terms of what type of stuff your Mandalorians can take and do.
Sure.
And that's more than just the operative.
It's exciting for like Republic. We'll get a bounty,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's really cool for players who like the Republic Army.
And I know this card was shown. I think the unit card for it was shown,
Yeah.
and you can see that it works for all four of the factions as well. So, like Pagani said, right, you can make him a bounty hunter. You can also kind of make him whatever you want in your factions as well, based on the equipment that you give him and that kind of stuff. And that's why I said it kind of half fills the bingo card, because he's that Mandalorian is not necessarily a true bounty hunter, but he can be a bounty hunter. So you can argue about whether you got a bingo or not on your card based on that.
You got a bingo or not.
Yeah, I mean, much like all of these, they're the customizables, right? They're very customizable, and I'm really excited to see how adding an operative that can do all of these sort of different things into every faction goes, and where people find different ways to shore up weaknesses or things that are missing from factions with this character is very exciting to me. From a like, how are players going to explore this and apply it? And that kind of stuff. So
I'm already trying to think how many I need to buy to do different paint schemes since they're going in every faction
Right.
now. That's right, and how many different. I mean, we don't even know the customizable options yet besides that little screw picture. So that's going to
the
be exciting.
opportunities are endless.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously they showed a little bit of like the part options and opportunities on it, but if you remember way back when we announced the original build your own, like the customizable commanders and operatives, Dallas mentioned the top level part count, but then he was like, but you haven't seen it yet. Well, now you have.
So this is the one with the most options that he
Yes,
mentioned
yes,
like forever
yes.
ago. Interesting.
By
Okay,
So far, and it is exceptionally a lot.
that is awesome. That transitions to my next question. You mentioned on there that the initiates or the warriors, you can build them 3 different ways. It can be initiates, warriors, and
Clan Crease.
Clan Crease. Thank you. And so I'm assuming if I remember the picture that you showed on the screen, so forgive me if I didn't, the battle box comes with 3 of those.
So so the army box comes with, I believe it's 3 units of the Mandalorian warriors, and that box can be built to make the initiates, which are kind of the low level. They're your cheaper
The
like
low
super
guys.
squads. You can build the warriors, which are of course like full blown Mando warriors, and they have that unique strike team split that was shown in the cards. And then you can also, there are parts, and like this is another set that has so much customizability. It has so many different options. You can also build them as Clan Kreese veterans. Now, the army box is meant to allow a player to play 600-point recon level list of the covert, and that's why it includes the Mandalorian and Grogu and the armor as your commander and operative options. And so, the frame will still have the Clan Kreese options on it. The box itself only has the rules content for the covert because we don't want people to like build things that can't actually use them in this. Now, you as a player, if you're like, I'm going to print and play or whatever, you could use those parts for whatever. And if you want to do a Clan Kreese and not worry about the rest of it, you could do that. But yeah, that Mandalorian Warriors kit is probably the most ambitious, like miniatures kit that we've ever done from an engineering and a parting standpoint, and the number of options and the way you can build them, and the way in which the parts interchange and all this stuff. Like, it's wild. It is very cool. And I mean, if ever we did too much, it might be that one. That might be the point where you're like, maybe a bit too much.
So if you want the Clan Kreese, like cards and stuff, that comes in the standalone box.
Yeah.
The Battle Force box is more for the initiates.
Yeah, the army box is and obviously Clan Kreese, the clan factions, they use initiates, they use warriors.
Yes.
Right? So
Sure.
those units are going to be super important. They are the core foundations
Your
for all of the
engineers.
clans. But each clan is kind of separated by the fact that it gets access to a unique clan-specific special forces or other unit. So you have your Mandalorian Super Commandos for Clan Saxon. You have the new Clan Ren card that we showed, which I don't remember.
And
Yeah, the veterans.
They each have like unique keywords that interact in different ways. So there's like the "This is the way" keyword, or it's like "We're family," and those different things. So there's going to be different sort of through lines in the rules for each of these things. They're going to make them play very, very differently. And each of those keywords kind of personifies, I guess, or exemplifies a different style of like honor and duty and things like that. They're all very, very important to the Mandalorians. But each of the different clans or representations do it in a different way, right?
Make them feel more unique from each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe minor spoiler here, as you take your warriors and your initiates and stuff, you're going to be able to sort of change them into the different factions as a way to go. So if you're playing Ren, you're going to have Ren warriors that are going to play very differently than, say, Saxon warriors.
So like an upgrade card will give them like,
Correct.
I don't know, this is the way or whatever it was, for example. Yeah.
So it'll change their affiliation, which will let them order each other and do all that kind of thing. And then
Nice.
also all the keywords and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it really is, I think, it's the biggest sandbox that we've ever been able to offer to
Absolutely.
players in Legion so far, and it's super exciting to be able to bring a lot of the concepts that we talked about with, the customizable commanders, with tours of duty especially, bringing in some of that like narrative and that story element to the general factions, but then to do it in a complete army. A hugely ambitious project on all levels, and the work the studio did, I couldn't be prouder and couldn't be more amazed by the fact of like what we were able to accomplish, what their minds were able to come up with, how we brought it all together, and then the fact that we were able to like truly surprise people with it.
Oh yeah.
Like right at the end,
Coming out in 3 months.
it all came through. The number of times we were talking about, even at Mini Strav, and doing like different podcasts and everything, like just being like, just wait until March. They have no idea what's coming. and like working on that video and seeing it, showing it internally, it's like when you get somebody the best Christmas gift that you think you can possibly give them, and then you wrap it and you're like, I should give it to him now. No, I gotta wait. But what if I gave it to him now? What? No, we gotta wait. Like, but what if we just gave them a hint? No, like it's so hard. We were just so excited about it and everything. And so it was a blast. I think it's going to be such a huge thing for the game. Obviously,
I hope you guys are printing a lot of them.
That's all handled by Asmodee, our publisher. So we encourage them to hit that, and they are very good at understanding what their metrics and numbers are. But and this is kind of a great just instance to remind people that the way in which the whole system works, right, is like we are similar to like how EA has game studios like Tetrarch or whatever, right? We create the games, but we're benefited by the fact that we have this global publishing and distribution network that is Asmodee, which we are a part of. We're directly a part of it, that handles all of that stuff. So it really allows us to focus on the creativity and the creation of it, engaging with the community, making the games as best they can, and then they take care of all the manufacturing and the distribution and things like that. They of course ask us, they're like, is this going to be popular? And we're like, yes, it's going to be very popular. And several of the AUSA folks were actually in the hall last night, and I had a funny conversation with him where he's like, well, I think we're going to sell a lot of those. And I was like, I think so. I think people are pretty excited.
Yeah.
So mission accomplished.
It looks awesome. Another question I saw pop up a lot was you showed off the new Clan Ren Veterans card. And so just curious what you could say on that. As in the question I see popping up, is that Clan Veteran card like exclusive for these battle forces, or is that going to replace some of the Rebels ones, or anything you could say on that? I guess I saw popping up a lot.
So I believe the alternate versions of those units are exclusive to the Mandalorian battle forces. So those will not be going into the other. They will not be replacing the previous cards.
Okay, perfect. And then the last thing on the Mandalorians that I want to talk about a little bit is that I saw that a lot of the name people, like I'm trying to remember who showed, like Bo-Katan, looks like her and her veterans at least look like can go into Republic and into Rebels, I believe. So it's going to be nice to see. Not only are you giving a whole new battle force, build your own battle force, customizable battle forces, but you're also giving it new named operatives and commanders, I'm assuming some are, into existing forces to help bolster them. So this release isn't really just, you're going to have to buy all these Mandos to play with them. You can play with them in the factions you have for the most part. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we see Mandalorians kind of like throughout Star Wars and all the different media, like tagging in, whether it's Ren with the Rebels, whether it's Clan Kryze with both the New Republic kind of, which we've bucketed into Rebels for the most part at this point, or the Galactic Republic, right? And I think it's Mandalorians are cool. People want to play with Mandalorians.
Play with Mandalorians.
Bring in more Mandalorians. One of the things that we constantly see is, when are we gonna see a Mandalorian army? Well, now. When are we going to see more Mandalorians? I want to see this Mandalorian. I want to play an army that's nothing but Mandalorians. I think like they're just so iconic now, especially since the Mandalorian Disney Plus show, of modern Star Wars, and everybody has resonated with them, and they're just cool looking. And why don't you want some of them? So we obviously wanted to take the opportunity to provide, all the value we could for players. Whether you want to play a full Mandalorian army or whether you just want to add Mandalorians, maybe you want to create a Galactic Republic list that reflects, the attack on Mandalore from season 7, and you want to have your Kryze fighting next to your Ahsoka-led, 334? I forget the number of the clone battalion, because I'm bad at Star Wars.
332nd.
There you go.
They'll let us know in the comments if we're wrong.
Yeah.
Thanks, chat.
I don't pretend to be good at Star Wars all the time. But yeah, so I think there's just a lot of really fun stuff for that, and that was a big thing too, and it was fun to test all those things and give players the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I know last year in the display case, you guys actually had the new Sabine model in there, way ahead to show when she was jumping through, and I saw it again in the trailer. The only thing I didn't see it, maybe I missed it because there was so much. I saw the one box with has Vizsla and all them. Is Sabine coming in a different box, or was she in that? And I just didn't see her in that little. Because it was small.
Sabine's coming in a different box as a primarily Rebel character. She's going to be released. Later.
With other Rebels.
Yeah,
sure,
makes sense.
Okay, that makes sense. Awesome. Well, then we'll segue off of Mandos into not less exciting, but different exciting stuff. One that I wasn't prepared for, which was the Mud Trooper Wet Weather Stormtrooper Battle Army box. That also gave you a new Imperial same unit but new look to the Imperial officer, right? In that regard. Talk about that a little bit. That looks awesome.
Yeah, so one of the things we really like to do with those special edition army boxes is if they're special edition, we want to put in kind of some unique sculpts, right? So with the Mandalorians, it is the Mandalorian and Grogu. Now he's armed with the Darksaber. I think somebody asked online, like, does this mean he's going to get access to the Darksaber?
Yes.
That is true. That is true. That is something that happens locked into the Battle Force. So if you're playing him in Rebels or whatever, I don't think that's going to happen. As I remember, that is another like exclusive thing to playing him within the covert, is that he can access that. But so that was fun. Like, it was a new option. We were like, well, people really loved that moment when he was wielding it, so let's do that. The Imperial officer that represents the Minbam kind of forces in the style is another one just like that, right? So we look for opportunities where we can do that, and kind of the same thing we talked about with the special edition Leia and Vader from Blizzard Force and Echo Base, is that we want to find ways to, kind of reward early adopters, or to reward people that like want to go all in and do these things in ways that doesn't change the power level of the game. Is obviously very important, or provide exclusive rules, but gives the hobbyist and the collector something to be like, oh, this is super awesome, I have something that's slightly different, and to kind of get that moment, because I think those things are important. They are very special to us as people who do collect armies and do these types of things, and they're very fun for us internally to be able to take different takes on the character visually and that kind of thing. As far as the army and the battle force itself, I'll let Pagani talk about it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, the Mud Troopers are sort of the less elite, I guess, right? Like Stormtroopers, whereas they
Even
don't
more
necessarily.
than Storms.
Yeah, well, Stormtroopers in the movies and that kind of thing are not particularly competent always, but they're, if you like read in canon events and things like that, Stormtroopers are terrifying. They're supposed to be like the super elite troopers of the Empire and all that kind of thing. Whereas Mud Troopers, that's sort of like your basic army guys, right?
Yeah.
That are not as highly trained. They don't have the great equipment. They don't have that kind of stuff. So this is going to bring a very different feel into the Empire for what these units are going to be and what they can do. And then we really leaned into sort of like the trench warfare, that like huge amount of fog of war that we saw in the Solo movie, right? The explosions going off everywhere, the panic, the terror of all of what real war on the ground in the trenches in like World War I and World War II that all this was kind of based off of felt like. And that's kind of what that is based on, and those units are based on, is sort of what does that look like in Star Wars and how does that work? So that was a lot of the inspiration for coming up with the rules for those kind of things, what the special rules are for the battle force and things like that. So
I'm excited to see those rules when they come out. The officer himself, you guys both mentioned that he's for looks. Is there anything you could say? Is he different at all play-wise, or is it like maybe a battle force thing? Or is he really just like a cool thing, like kind of like you mentioned, like the Leia and such?
Yeah, no, the officer in that box can be used one in two ways. It's just an alternate sculpt that can either be used as an Imperial officer to attach to a unit, or you can obviously use him to represent your customizable Imperial officer, which is, again, the nice thing about having those customizables is that when we do things like a new battle force for Minbam or something, we can kind of rely on those things on that kit to allow players to be able to customize something that fits within the battle force. Maybe we add a new doctrine here or there to go with that.
There are new doctrines in that battle force that are specific to that battle.
I didn't even think of that. That is a great design space you guys can play with now. Just adding a doctrine to. Sorry, go ahead. That's exciting.
So of course, if you visually want that and you want to have that character kind of represented, if you get the battle force, obviously it's a great way to not only get your wet weathers and your Minbams and an occupier tank, and then of course this unique looking officer that will then better represent, hobby-wise, the new doctrines for the battle force if you're playing it and stuff. But
they look great.
Yeah, again, I think
the Mud Troopers are one of my favorite looking Empire units.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they look amazing. You guys killed it.
They're so cool.
But I think more and more as we we talked a lot about how we had to get to a point where the new edition could launch. Now we're in the new edition, and hopefully, we've seen a lot of momentum, but now the vision for where our ultimate goals are and why we kind of did what we did and worked on the changes that we did are becoming more and more apparent with how we were able to explore more into the niche sections through battle forces, right, and to create really unique experiences within the overall factions. In addition to doing sub factions and different armies and battle forces and all this stuff, Mandalorians and other things, we really have a more open pathway forward to experience and bring in things that previously would have been very hard to engineer into the game. Might have been very difficult to try to reflect in a canonical experience as well as a player experience and that kind of stuff. So it's been very exciting. A lot of the foundational blocks have been laid, and we're now getting to really show what the house will look like as it gets built.
The other thing you showed off on screen was the Guerrilla Troopers. You showed their card off and their models, which were in the booth as well. And exciting for Rebels player because it's a non-Mando red save unit, which is going to be exciting. Anything you want to talk about them, about like design or how they fit into the army overall?
Yeah, they're sort of like a group of rebels that have stolen a bunch of equipment from the Imperials, right? They're wearing some of the armor, they've got some of the weapons, they got the HH-12 and stuff in there, right? So it's, I think, going to be a very different style unit than Rebels is used to. Whereas Rebels are sort of the pseudo-trained, organized, like Rebel troopers or fleet troopers or veterans or that kind of thing. This is very much more of like an independent operating unit that is not necessarily in contact with Rebel Command, but they're still there, they're still fighting the good fight, they're still doing those kind of things. So that's sort of the inspiration behind that unit and what they're doing is going in and doing what they think is best, which may not be best.
Almost like the Saw Gerrera from the movie,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, sort of a little bit
they're
of
part
that
of the Rebels, but they don't really listen.
Sort of a little bit of that going on. For
no,
sure.
they look awesome. And then you showed off a whole bunch of cards for like the upcoming Masters, like
Jedi
the name
Council,
Jedi Council. Thank you, which look great. We didn't get Vapid, but there's the command card you showed that kind of hints at what Vapid
A little
is.
bit, yeah.
So that's exciting.
People can start putting it together. You know?
Yeah, I think it's an easy thing to put together, right? What of those Masters would you guys say, if you guys had chances to play, I'm assuming you had, was your favorite and why?
I love playing hyper durable things. They're very, very hard to take off the table, and Kiadi Mundi, in my opinion, is the most durable Jedi that we've ever seen. So that guy gets on a point, and you're not getting him off the point. And he brings some very interesting like force manipulation stuff, where he's like a super force user. He gets all this kind of stuff. He's got natural force. He's got all that good stuff, and that was really, really fun to play with. And then as sort of a second one in here. I love how Shakti looks, and playing with all the mercenary stuff has been really, really fun too.
I saw
to
that
bring a very different style of Jedi into the game. So.
I think Shakti Galactic Republic / Mando army is going to be pretty popular. Like, if you want to really mix and match your clone troopers and your Mandalorians, she offers some very strong synergies just because she's designed to integrate mercenaries better into any army she plays, like no matter the type. For me, like, I like to just run forward and hit things with glowy purple sticks, so Mace Windu is the best. You know, like, zero question. I don't have to think too hard.
So if you like an Anakin player, he's probably going to be your...
Oh, yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
think there'll be many debates probably among players about which one is, more terrifying in Melee. They do similar different things, and obviously Anakin will always have his ability to kind of go out of activation order, but Mace is an absolute unit on his own, and is really great.
That's what it should be. And then you guys also did the nice thing where you showed that they're all going to have an upgrade version that can go into units, which is fantastic. Because as someone who's been playing the game since forever, I love that you're going to have very easily be able to get like 10 plus Jedis on the field. Only 2 or 3 might be actual like commanders or operatives, so the rest can be fill-ins. So that's going to look just amazing on the board. You're going to have like an army of clones with like just purple, blue, green clone sticks charging at your enemy.
I'm really looking forward to that, right? Like seeing that like Clone Wars situation going on with all the Jedi charging the clones behind them. I think it's going to be incredibly inspiring.
We were testing the new Total War, and some guy he brought from our Patreon actually brought 10 ATSTs, and the table next to him I think had 190 something B1.
196, I think.
Yeah, 196 B1. So I'm just in my head I'm like, you know how many Jedi you can get on that table now?
So many.
It's going to be incredible.
So many.
Incredible.
So yeah, so the visual options are there. They're going to look great. Anything that you guys want to mention on the Star Wars? You have something coming up in April, the big point restrictions and rules. Is it? You don't have to give any spoilers. It's too early for that. But any points or rules, or is it a mix of both, or what should players expect from that?
Yeah, so there's a pretty substantial points update, and then we've also sort of been streamlining and things like that on some various core rules to remove some confusion and things like that. I don't want to give too much information because you know how the internet runs wild with things.
They do.
But yeah, so it is an update.
You didn't want to confirm the conspiracy that the artwork actually does directly correspond to some of the big things in that update.
I would love if you wanted to.
Yes? I don't remember what the artwork was now.
B1s, like an assembly line.
An assembly factory.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So that was intentional.
Yeah.
So something with the CIS is going to get some kind of rules change or update or points, something. Let's
Have fun.
Somebody
Ponder.
might say that.
Like I said, there's definitely a conspiracy theory out there.
Okay.
Speculate.
Speculate. Okay, we'll transition off Legion. We'll hit Shatterpoint now.
Okay.
You got to show off. We finally saw the three sculpts for Kylo and the Phasma box. They look amazing. One of the things I'm glad you mentioned on the stage, which has been asked the most in our comments of our videos, was now that Shatterpoint was announced, I believe at Gamma, wherever the announcement came out, that was moving to more of a specialist game. That it was quote unquote people were saying it's dead. Me in the comments saying that they would have said that if it was, and you kind of confirmed that. So if you just want to give a second to talk to people on that, like just what
Sure.
what you said.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot, obviously, that has happened. We've put out a lot of content originally, and one of the things that we really had to look at was, like, how do we make this game sustainable, and how do we shepherd it in a proper way? You know, it has over 130 units at this point, or characters, for players to choose from. That happened in a very short time span of, like, 2.5-3 years, right? And that was kind of intentional. We knew that, you know, we had this window where Legion was going to be ramping down as we moved into the second edition. And so what we wanted to do was really put the foot on the gas, create this really robust and healthy ecosystem for Shatterpoint, knowing that eventually, you know, you just can't keep that pace up forever. It's going to be impossible. And I think even as we got towards the tail end of that 2.5 years of, like, products all the time, you know, multiple products per thing, we were seeing players being like, this is too much. I can't even keep up. I don't even know, like, kind of like what's going on. And there's a contingent of, like, super dedicated and passionate players who do get everything and they love that kind of pace. But the reality is that for the general community, right, it's just not tenable, and it's not really tenable from a business perspective either to just be, like, constantly shoveling out stuff. And Shatterpoint is a game where, like, players have access to everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you kind of, like, look overall, it's just one of those things where you say, okay, we've hit a really good point. Now let's go ahead and transition. Let's pull the foot off the gas. And we were talking about this even last year at Adepticon, right? The last year's Adepticon roadmap was a little bit lighter. This year's obviously is kind of lightest, and we've officially confirmed kind of where we're going. But the goal is that we're going to maintain a great, you know, as great a play experience as possible. I'm positive based on all the response and the people playing here, the community is going to be as healthy as ever. And we'll just kind of shepherd that. And there will be new releases the players can get excited about. But what we're really hoping for is, like, fewer but more high impacts, right? So that when things come out, it's really a big moment. People can get all excited about it. They can think about how they're going to integrate that into their collections. Maybe if you haven't, you know, if you're not one of those people who's, like, dove in and gotten everything, you now have the space and the ability to explore and to think about these lists and to maybe go back to one that you passed on initially, and you can say, oh, well, now I see how this could work, where I kind of liked this at the time, but it wasn't in my budget, or things like that, because I wanted something else that was coming out. You know, I think there's so much life left in that game. Even if we were to suddenly be like, we're done today, which we're not, very clearly we're not. We have a lot of stuff going on.
Okay.
Like, you know, that I think that Shatterpoint experience, like, honestly, with everything we were able to do, there's still so much ground left to be explored. Right? There's still so many things for players to, like, dive into and find, and experiences to have. There's a lot of life left into it, but we're going to give it even more. Right? Our commitment is, and our intention is to continue to do that. It's just we have to do it in a more manageable and sustainable way. And this was kind of always in the plan to some extent or another, that we were going to have to slow down. Yeah. Right. And so we got it to a point that we felt very healthy with, like the announcement kind of said. You know, we've hit every era of Star Wars in one way or another, within kind of the Skywalker saga of things. And that's really incredible. And it felt like a really good point to kind of be like, okay, let's move to this next step. Where now we're kind of integrating everything into the reality of where the studio is, how the business is to work, the reality of the market, and all these other things, but also in a way that we can feel really confident that we're going to be able to continue to do Shatterpoint for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
No, I think it's great. And you also mentioned that there's a big points update coming out for that one as well. Same question kind of for Legion. Is it just points, or just people expect some rules, or a bit of both? Or?
A bit of both again, right? Like, the hope is that we can, I mean, to get a little philosophical, right? Our goal is always, hopefully, to change as little as possible and not change anything, because these are the things that people experienced and they want to do those kind of things. But there are balance concerns. There are things that we need to address. There are things that need to be brought up. There are things that need to be brought down. So all of that is included in this update. And then we're also looking at cleaning up rule situations, things like that are confusing and that kind of stuff. And if something needs to be looked at, we're going to look at it. And then we're going to make the value judgment call of, do we want to do this now? Do we want to do this later? Do we not want to do this? Do we want to do this? All that kind of stuff. Yeah.
You showed off the B1 card, which they look a good amount better. I'm happy to see that.
Yeah,
Roger's going to be Rogering.
So let's Roger all the way.
Okay, great. We'll segue to MCP.
Mhm.
And there's two things from MCP. We're kind of sitting when I don't think it's seen in the frame, but there's the Alliances coming out, which you guys kind of showed off the Green Goblin, Night of the Goblin box, and you guys hinted at the Sentinels one before this, and then tonight you showed the Sentinels in a little bit more detail yesterday, and then you also showed the next one, which is Kane.
And if you make your way over to the case, you're going to find out that we surprisingly put in a lot of new miniatures that were shown off last night.
Oh, okay.
Including some that weren't shown off last night.
More surprises.
Yeah,
I'll
we're
take pictures,
full
so
of
look at our
surprises.
socials for all those.
Yeah, so Marvel Crisis Protocol Alliances, it's a very exciting new product line. It's going to be within the Crisis Protocol, brand, but it does stand beside, not with Crisis Protocol. And they offer different experiences, but they're obviously cross-compatible as well. And one of the things that we really, we're excited to do with that is that we get to create these different standalone experiences that also are cross-compatible. And with that, we kind of looked at the gamut and we said, okay, we're going to do a Spider-Verse one, we're going to do an X-Men one, and then we're going to do an Avengers one. And that kind of hits like the biggest core three for Marvel. And really, by the time Once and Future Kang comes out, it gives you so much opportunity to mix and match and to create custom units and things like that. The other selfish thing that MCA allowed us to do with that pattern is you'll notice that a lot of the characters that are featured in those packs are characters that, were designed way back in the day. A lot of them have older sculpts or things like that. And so this gave us a chance to really update and flex our engineering and sculpting chops that we've gained over all this time to make some really incredible new versions.
Those new X-Men look great, by the way.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. We see them in the case, they look even better.
They look so good.
And again, talking like we talked about last night, MCA is meant to be a bridge. It is a product that hopefully will exist and appeal to a wide tabletop board game audience because it is a board game. Our goals are to show that, there's more ways to make a board game figure than just PVC soft plastic. That you can have really high quality, high detailed miniatures that inspire you maybe to be like, well, I've seen other people paint their board game pieces before. Like, these guys really seem like they deserve the paint, so maybe I'll figure out how to do that. Maybe I'll try my hand at that. And then also, that can be a lead-in to other aspects of the hobby. It can take you to Marvel Crisis Protocol because you're going to learn a lot of the DNA from that game. It's going to expose players who might not have ever seen that or be interested in those games to these kind of concepts, right? And I think that's really important because at the end of the day, our goal has always been, since the start of the studio, what can we do to ensure that this hobby and this community continues to grow and continues to thrive well after we're not in it anymore, right? Like, well after we've passed on and out of like the limelight. How do we leave our mark and ensure that like the joy and the experiences that we had over the course of our careers, both players and people who worked in it, continue on. And, when we're retired and sitting on a beach somewhere, we can like watch as the next generation that hopefully, we had some impact on, continues to like make awesome things. And we say, man, I really wish that my hands weren't all like broken and arthritic so I could go paint.
So old.
I'm so old, sir.
You're choosing the FAST system.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about what that stands for? I know you mentioned it last night.
So FAST stands for Fusion Assembly System. And everyone's going to be like, that's 3 words. And I'm going to say yes, but System is where we get the S and the T. So FAST. And the goal here is that we really we needed to define something that we could throw, a logo we could throw on packaging because, well, MCA is the first product that has fast menus, which are press fit. They don't require glue. We worked really hard to make that overall experience feel like a constructible like kit, right? So we have our Atoms that are paint and take, which is our little mascot robot. That is actually a press fit miniature. So we've been able to have people have the experience. Yeah, we don't force you to assemble them so you can just come down and paint. But that was our first test for press fit and for the fastest.
Sneaky.
And we've had a lot of people have experience with building it. And every time I've given a set of one of those to somebody who's like, I don't hobby, I've never built a miniature. And you kind of like, you're like, well, just flip off the parts and then now start putting them together. And by the time they're done, they're like, I want to do another one. That was so much fun, right? And we see this all the time. There are a lot of constructible toys and products out there that people love, right? Our hobby is no different. It's kind of been mystified or like clouded in this shroud of like, oh, but it's very complicated and it's serious business. And it's not, right? But you have to give people that first experience, that first success to be like, oh, that was really fun. I want to do more of it. So that's really the hope behind the Fast Mini system is that we're going to be able to do that. And then we're going to be able to apply the products again to build bridges, right? We can do it with board game with a board game that brings you kind of softly into the hobby and shows you the joy of like
Sure.
assembly, and then makes you think about painting, and then maybe leads you to another game. We can do it with like new starters, right? I promise you, if we'd had the fast mini system, back when we were working on the Legion starters, all the Legion starters would have been fast, because that is a great entry point for players. Now, that said, fast has very specific lanes in which it belongs, right? It is for that new entry point. It's for new players. It's to build bridges. It's not for a flyer, right? It's not for an AA5. It's not for these bigger, more complex, like hobby-centric kits. But if we can grow your experience to that, right, we can give you the levels of progressions to get there, then obviously we're going to see more people adopt the hobby. We're going to see more people be excited about improving their skills and going in that way. So that's like the long pitch on fast. It's a very cool new tool that we get to use. I think it's going to be really influential in how we reach more people, how we grow this hobby and community, and how AMG is able to kind of break its way into different aspects of tabletop that haven't really seen anything before, and to prove that hard plastic miniatures aren't just for tabletop miniatures games. They can be for a lot more.
Yeah, they look. Wait till you guys see them in person. They look really, really good. Better than you think. Especially Goblin. I think he was my favorite of the first box, at least.
He's very incredible. He's definitely the most complex build, just based on how over the top crazy he is.
Have you looked at it?
But even then, I think he's 13 parts, and the assembly is really smooth, and yeah, he just looks gorgeous. It's incredible upgrade for what was once considered one of our best skulls.
That's awesome. And then on your roadmap on MCP, you were showing some of those new Sentinel units, and you revealed their cards. You guys haven't had a chance to check those out. But you also dropped there's going to be 2 new Thunderbolts, and I'm trying to remember the other one. Intelligence. Yeah. So do you want to talk just a little bit about that and give for those who didn't see the conference?
Yeah. So Red Hulk is the leader for Thunderbolts. He's going to put together the team, and that team is all about sort of aggressive
Murder.
It's one way to say it. Yeah. Yeah. Aggressive murder. Aggressive sort of objective play, and really bullying people off and pushing people off objectives, but I guess pushing people off in the army sense of push, not in the MCP sense of push. They're all about doing damage and getting in there and brawling and doing that kind of stuff, and they do it very, very well. The Intelligentsia is all about being kind of clever and knowing what's going on and seeing all that kind of stuff. So they've got some more tricky things going on and less sort of direct gameplay and more sort of, if I can do this, then this, and this, and this, and this. So they're 2 very different play styles that kind of currently exist in the game, but it's new ways to do those things for that. And then we actually have a third affiliation, which is Onslaught. Onslaught's Grasp, which I'm not going to give too much on that one. But Onslaught's another very high threat leader, sort of in the vein of like that Thanos. Apocalypse. That was the other one. Thanos Apocalypse situation where they're going to get their own little list and do all sorts of cool, crazy stuff like that.
That's awesome. Looking forward to that one. Onslaught, that mini has to be one of the coolest ones.
He's super dope.
Yeah, I know we've said it a bunch of times in the past, Shick, but one of the first things that we were like is I was like, we got to put Onslaught in the game. And Shick was like, that dude is too much. We can't do it. And this was like 5, 6, 7 years ago. And look at us now. Never say never. That's what I'm saying.
No, that's awesome. And you guys also mentioned that the Red Hulk that you've shown off in the booth stuff is the regular one, but there's one coming with a mustache as well.
Yeah,
so if you want
he's got some head options. If you want that Thunderbolt stash, you can do that.
He's also got.
I don't think that one made it in the box.
That one didn't make it. Okay.
No.
He's got a nice mustache. Okay, that's awesome. That one you also mentioned for this game too. At the end of it, that they're having a points update. I think you call it one of the biggest ones ever.
Certainly by volume. I'm not sure necessarily by impact, right? Because it's with the last update, we started doing sort of a stamina update as we were going.
Yes.
And this is sort of the completion of that. So we're going to be done kind of monkeying with stamina. It doesn't mean we're not going to change it more in the future, but we're going to be done with where our vision is for where things need to be at the moment. So it is certainly the most numerical characters that are being touched, but not necessarily the highest impact touches.
Sure.
So just to set expectations a little bit there as well. And then there are some other rules clarifications and all my normal spiel on updates is we're going to look at things and do that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
there's more in it than
there's
just
maybe
stamina as well.
There's maybe 10 characters that are getting dramatic touches, in terms of adjustments. I mentioned a couple of them last night. Shang-Chi, Apocalypse, a couple of the underperformers and overperformers that the community has been definitely aware of, and we've been aware of as well. So we're going to see those adjustments. But yeah, the bulk of it, as Pagani said, is really setting the new baseline, which we talked about a lot during Mini Extravaganza when people started to see the stamina adjustments go up, especially for 4 threats. We talked a little bit about that philosophy, but effectively what we're trying to do is we're trying to reach, we've seen kind of a discrepancy between attack, offensive powers, and then durability, and then the separation between 3 threats especially, and then 5 and 6 threats. And so we did a lot of analysis on okay, what's actually causing the gap? How do we bring that down? How do we kind of go back to the original vision of what a 3 threat versus a 5 threat or a 6 threat is supposed to be, and adjusting the survivability tool to ensure that one-shotting is much less likely or more reliable, and allow the 3 threat to have the chance to clap back. Not only because that allows the power mechanic to really shine in the way that it's supposed to, which is that you have more resources to do it, but also means that players don't have the experience where you put a character down and you never get to play with them.
Yes.
Because, a lot of MCP design is meant to prevent that alpha strike from stopping you from getting a chance to activate with your miniature in general. But as the game has progressed, as more character options have happened, as we've just gotten more modern, what we've really seen is that, the original guardrails we put in place, which healthy, injured, all of that stuff, dazed, players have become very good at manipulating around it through all these things.
Priorities.
Priority being the factor as well, and they can force very hard choices where it's yes, you can still take that turn maybe with that 3 threat character before I eliminate him, but if you do so, it might be a subpar activation. So you're just well, he's they're just not going to do anything this game.
Sure.
And that is a situation we never want. We never want players to come to the table and say, well, I had experiences where I just didn't get to do anything with this character because they got killed right away. You might not get to do anything with a character because they were never in a spot to be impactful, but at least you had control a little bit over moving them, making some choices. You got to do things with them, even if it wasn't what you wanted to do. So that's going to be this update. It is very big, but as Pagani said, it's it's a baseline. It's kind of low impact in general. It's not we're rewriting the entire game or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's low impact per character, but I hope that the update itself will end up being high impact overall on how the teams are built, what types of teams become more viable, and that kind of stuff.
Sure. Great. Looking forward to it. And then before we wrap up, I'm going to make you guys each pick. What was your favorite thing that we know of course, of the community that you've shown off, and which are you most excited for people to get their hands on?
Well, you haven't been to the case yet, but when you go to the case, and you see the thing that you're oh my gosh, they didn't show this off at all last night. That was it.
Okay.
Really? That's not an answer. They don't know what it is.
He'll take a picture of it and he'll show them. I don't want to spoil it.
You can spoil it for me.
Okay.
This will be out later. Yeah, that probably will be my favorite. Look at our socials for that, because that's something I've been wanting for a while.
Sure. I mean, I have to be Onslaught, right? I've been trying to get that guy in the game for 7 years, so here we are.
Yeah, Onslaught. Yeah, he looks great. Well, I want to thank you guys both for coming on the channel, like you guys always do. Also, thank you for a roadmap that blew my expectations away. So I'm a happy guy. In June, I'm going to be painting a ton of Mandos, it looks like, to get them on the channel as quickly as possible, because they just look amazing. So thank you both.
April update. We should probably tell them that they're going to get 2 new tours of duty.
At least 2.
At least 2.
Because I think there was one that was supposed to be here that isn't here.
Yeah, I think
also go there. So, that will be
there's two new tours of duty for Legion. Tours of duty story arcs.
Very nice. Good. Yeah. We've been hitting that on the channel pretty good. So that's super exciting. There you go. New tours of duty.
They're kind of vaguely Mandalorian themed. If I can say that. I did. So
you did.
You did. Perfect. There you guys go. Some new tours of duty coming again. Well, thank you, Will. We'll talk to you guys again soon. Everyone else, have a great night.